The final days of Earth. Look, the year was 50,000 BC. Earth, once vibrant with life and civilization, stood on the brink of destruction. It wasn't a natural disaster or a plague that would bring humanity to its knees. No, this destruction was planned, deliberate, calculated, and executed by an enemy humanity couldn't even fathom. The Galactic Council, a vast alliance of powerful alien species, had decided that Earth and its people posed a threat too great to ignore. They had watched humanity grow and evolve, and as time passed, they saw something they feared. The humans, with their rapid technological advances and fierce determination, could one day challenge the power of the Galactic Council itself. Their creativity, their will to survive, their curiosity, all these things made them dangerous. And so, the decision was made. Earth must be destroyed. As the Galactic Council's fleet descended upon Earth, it was as if the very sky itself had cracked open. Great ships, larger than anything humanity had ever seen, hovered above the planet. These ships were not just tools of war, they were symbols of power. The Council was here to end everything. No warning, no mercy. On the ground, chaos erupted. Cities that once bustled with life were now silent, the streets filled with screams and the sound of destruction. The people had no idea what was coming for them. How could they? There had been no signs, no hints that this was even possible. A few government officials had spoken in hushed tones about potential threats from space, but those conversations were quickly dismissed as paranoid fantasies. No one believed that something as unimaginable as an alien attack could happen to them. They were wrong. The first wave of destruction came without warning. A massive beam of energy, powerful enough to tear apart mountains, fired down from the sky. It hit the Earth's surface with such force that the ground trembled, buildings crumbled, and fires erupted across the land. People screamed in panic as the very ground they stood on was torn apart. The leaders of Earth tried to rally their forces, but they were too late. The Galactic Council's technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. Their ships were indestructible, their weapons deadly, and their tactics ruthless. No matter what humanity tried to do, no matter how hard they fought, they were always one step behind. In one final act of desperation, the Earth's remaining leaders made a last-ditch attempt to communicate with the invaders. They sent a signal into space, hoping against hope that someone, somewhere, would hear their plea. It wasn't much, just a simple message, a cry for help. But it was the only thing they could do. The message was clear: we will survive. We will return. But the Council had no intention of letting that happen. As the last human cities burned to the ground, the leaders of the Galactic Council gathered in their massive, floating command ship. They watched the destruction unfold below them, cold and unemotional. To them, Earth was just another planet, another species to eliminate. There was no room for mercy in their hearts. And yet, as the final moments of Earth's destruction played out, something unexpected happened. A small group of humans, survivors from the chaos, managed to escape. They were not soldiers or scientists. They were ordinary people, mothers, fathers, children. But in the chaos of the final moments, they found their way to a hidden ship, a relic from an earlier time. It wasn't much, but it was enough to carry them away from the dying planet. The ship blasted off from Earth's atmosphere, leaving behind the burning remains of their home. The survivors looked out the window at the destruction below them, knowing they were the last of their kind. The Earth they had once known was gone, but they weren't giving up. They wouldn't forget, and they would return, someday, somehow, to take back their home. The survivors knew they had a long road ahead. They didn't have weapons or advanced technology. All they had was hope. Hope that one day they would be able to rebuild, hope that they would rise again. But first, they had to survive. They had to find a way to stay hidden, to avoid detection from the Galactic Council, and to prepare for the day when they could strike back. Little did they know, that day was still far in the future. 50,000 years would pass before Earth would once again see the return of humanity. In those years, Earth would change. The very nature of the planet would evolve, shaped by the destruction wrought by the Galactic Council. And yet, deep beneath the surface, in the ruins of cities long forgotten, humanity's spirit would never die. The Galactic Council, for all their power, had underestimated one thing: the will of humanity to survive. The survivors knew their time would come, and when it did, they would make the Council regret their decision to destroy Earth. The story of humanity was far from over. As the ship carrying the last survivors of Earth drifted into the vastness of space, a single thought echoed in their minds: we will return, and when we do, revenge will be ours. The Galactic Council's wrath, suspense builds. The survivors of Earth drifted through the cold void of space, unaware that their journey had only just begun. Years passed, and what was once a thriving group of humans, desperate to survive, had become a quiet, determined people. They had found refuge on a distant planet, far from the reach of the Galactic Council. But even in the safety of their new home, one thing was certain: they could never forget the destruction of Earth. The memories of their home, of their families, haunted them. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council, high above in the cold, metal halls of their council chambers, continued with their plans. Earth was already an afterthought to most of them. To the majority of council members, it was nothing more than a conquered world, one of many they had destroyed or absorbed. Their motives were clear: power and control. But there were those within the council who had a deeper fear, a fear of what humanity could become if left unchecked. The council was made up of many different species, each with their own goals and methods of achieving them. They were powerful, more advanced than anything humanity had ever known, and their rule stretched across galaxies. Yet even as they controlled worlds, their unity was fragile. Arguments and power struggles were common. Despite their disagreements, however, they all agreed on one thing: humanity was a threat. The moment Earth was destroyed, the Council had assumed they had won. They believed that humanity, like so many other species before them, would be wiped out and forgotten. However, they failed to recognize one crucial aspect of humanity: survival. Human beings, once pushed to the edge, could become unstoppable. The Council had underestimated them, and that mistake would come to haunt them. On the command ship of the Galactic Council, the leader, a tall and imposing figure with dark, glowing eyes, watched as reports came in. The Earth was gone, and the last human survivors had escaped into the stars. He listened to the reports with indifference, until one piece of news caught his attention. A small fleet of ships, human ships, had been spotted near the borders of Council space. "What is this?" The leader's voice echoed through the room, cold and dangerous. "How could this be?" One of his advisors spoke up, an alien with thin, sharp features. "Sir, the humans, they are not as extinct as we believed. Some remnants are still alive, hiding in the far reaches of space." The leader's expression darkened. He had ordered the complete annihilation of Earth, the erasure of humanity from the galaxy. He believed that their kind had been wiped from existence, but now it seemed that they had survived. And worse, they were preparing to return. "Find them," the leader commanded, his voice sharp with anger. "I want every fleet, every weapon, mobilized. We will finish what we started." The Council's forces sprang into action, deploying scouts and warships across the galaxy to track down the survivors. Every corner of space was being searched, but the humans had been careful. They were hiding in the vast expanse of the galaxy, out of reach for now. But the Galactic Council was patient, and their resources were endless. Back on their new home, the survivors had begun to rebuild. They had been living quietly for generations, growing stronger with each passing year. They had nothing left to lose, no homes to return to. But their anger burned bright. They had seen what the Galactic Council had done to their world, their people, and they swore that they would make them pay. One leader of the survivors, a man named Captain Jaden, stood on the balcony of the makeshift command center. He looked out at the stars, his thoughts heavy with the past. His mind was focused on one thing: revenge. "We'll never forget Earth," Jaden muttered to himself. "The Council took everything from us, but they made a mistake. We're not gone. We're coming back." His voice was low, but the others around him heard it. The survivors had gathered in secret, planning their next move. Jaden and his crew had spent years studying the Council's tactics, their weaknesses, their patterns. They had learned how to hide, how to remain unnoticed. But now, it was time to strike. Jaden turned to his crew, his face hard with determination. "It's time to make them pay. We know where they are. We know how they operate. And we know their greatest fear: humanity." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of Jaden's words settling in. Everyone in that room had lost something to the Council: family, friends, a home. Their hearts burned with the desire for vengeance. "We've been waiting for this moment," Jaden continued. "We will take back Earth. We will show the Council that humanity cannot be destroyed." As the crew prepared their ships, ready to venture back into the unknown, a deep sense of purpose filled the air. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for revenge. They would not be forgotten. And the Galactic Council would soon learn just how far humanity would go to reclaim their home. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council's forces continued their search. They believed they were hunting down the last remnants of a defeated species, but they were wrong. They were not hunting humans. They were hunting their worst nightmare. Soon, the survivors of Earth would come face to face with the Council, and the universe would watch as the battle for revenge began. The survivors, mystery of the return. The survivors of Earth had spent decades hiding in the shadows, rebuilding in silence. The planet they had found refuge on was far from Earth, a barren world with no civilization, only the raw elements of survival. But in the quiet of their makeshift homes, they harbored a single, unshakable truth: they were the last of humanity, and they would one day return to Earth. The years had not been kind to them. The survivors had no access to advanced technology, no fleets of ships or vast armies to call upon. All they had were their wits, their determination, and the will to rise again. The Galactic Council had thought them gone, wiped out and erased from the memory of the galaxy. But the Council had made a terrible mistake. Captain Jaden stood on the highest peak of the survivors' camp, looking out over the barren landscape. The wind howled around him, carrying with it the dust of a world that seemed to have forgotten life. His face was marked with time, his eyes reflecting the years of hardship, but beneath the weariness, there was something else: hope. "We will go back," Jaden muttered to himself, his voice barely audible over the wind. No matter what. Jaden was not just the leader of the survivors. He was a symbol of their undying will. He had lost his family, his home, everything. But in the darkest of times, he had kept the survivors alive. Now his thoughts were fixed on the future. Earth was waiting for them, and the Galactic Council would not stand in their way. Over the years, they had studied everything they could about the Council. They learned about the Council's immense power, its fleets, and its ruthless ways. But they also learned about its weaknesses, the cracks in the foundation of its empire. The Council, in all its glory, had never considered the possibility of humanity surviving. To them, Earth was nothing more than a failed experiment, a planet that was easily wiped away. But Jaden and his people were about to prove them wrong. As Jaden gathered his crew for a strategy meeting, the survivors gathered in a dimly lit room, their faces hardened by years of hiding, but burning with a common purpose. The room was filled with old star maps, blueprints of Council ships, and research on Earth's history. They had nothing but their memories, a single message from Earth's final moments, and a relentless desire for revenge. "We've been waiting for this moment," Jaden said, his voice commanding yet calm. "For too long, we've hidden in the darkness. Now, we're going to make our presence known. We'll return to Earth, and we will take it back from the Council." His words were met with silence, but not one person in the room doubted him. These were people who had endured the worst the galaxy had thrown at them. They were ready. The survivors had only one ship capable of interstellar travel, an old relic of Earth's past, buried deep in the planet's core. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They had repaired it over the years, scavenging what they could, learning how to operate it piece by piece. It was their only hope, their only way to fight back. The plan was simple: infiltrate Council space, locate Earth, and prepare for the final confrontation. But there was one problem. They had no idea what they would find when they arrived. Would Earth still be there? Would it be inhabitable? Or had the Council left nothing behind but ashes? Jaden knew the risks. The Galactic Council was not easily defeated. They had technology far beyond anything the survivors had. Their fleets were vast, their weapons devastating. And yet there was something the Council didn't understand: humanity's ability to adapt, to survive, and to fight back. The survivors weren't just a remnant of Earth. They were the future. And no matter how powerful the Council was, they would not be able to stop what was coming. As Jaden and his crew set their course for Earth, the weight of the mission hung heavily on their shoulders. The journey would take time, and every moment spent in the vastness of space brought new dangers. But they had no choice. The Galactic Council had stolen their home, and they would stop at nothing to reclaim it. But as the ship's engines hummed to life, and the survivors set course for Earth, something else began to stir in the depths of space. Unknown to them, the Galactic Council had already begun to search for the last remnants of humanity. The Council's scouts had detected something strange, a faint signal, a whisper of life. The survivors had been careful to avoid detection, but it seemed the Council was getting closer. Jaden stood on the bridge of the ship, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. He could feel the weight of the past pressing down on him. His mind raced with memories of Earth, of his family, his friends, his old life. But that was gone now. The only thing that mattered was the mission. "We're not just going to survive," Jaden said, his voice low but steady. "We're going to win. And when we do, the Council will know what happens when they mess with humanity." As the survivors prepared for their journey, the ship slipped silently into the unknown reaches of space. They didn't know what awaited them, but they knew one thing for sure: their fight for Earth had just begun. And soon, they would make the Galactic Council regret ever thinking they could destroy humanity. The battle begins, confrontation looms. The journey to Earth was long and filled with uncertainty. The survivors aboard the last remaining ship from Earth had no illusions about the challenges that lay ahead. They were venturing into the heart of enemy space, a place where their very existence was a threat. Their ship, though a relic from Earth's past, was their only hope, a fragile thread in the vast expanse of the galaxy. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. As the ship glided through the stars, Jaden stood at the helm, his hands gripping the controls, his mind focused on one thing: the destruction of the Galactic Council. He had spent so many years hiding, so many years wondering if Earth was even worth returning to. Now all those years of waiting, planning, and surviving were about to pay off. But as they neared the outskirts of Council-controlled space, the stakes grew higher. The Galactic Council was vast, and their reach extended far beyond the survivors' ability to hide. The Council had already begun their search for humanity's remnants. The survivors knew they couldn't remain unnoticed forever, and every moment they spent in enemy space was another moment the Council could be closing in on them. "I've located a route through the Council's patrol zones," Lieutenant Kara, the ship's navigator, announced. Her voice was steady, but Jaden could hear the tension behind it. "But it won't be easy. There are patrols, fleets, and automated defense systems in place. We'll have to be careful." Jaden nodded grimly. "Careful is all we've ever been. We've survived this long because of it." Kara worked quickly, plotting a course through the narrow gaps in the Council's surveillance. The crew had learned to be masters of stealth over the years. It was their greatest weapon. The ship had been modified for speed, and with careful navigation, they could slip past the Council's defenses unnoticed, at least for now. The ship's engines hummed low as they crept forward, inching closer to Earth. Every turn, every shift in trajectory was calculated. One wrong move, one misstep, and they would be found. But the survivors had no choice. They had to move forward. They had to confront the past. Earth was waiting, and the Council had to pay for what they had done. As the ship drew closer to the planet's coordinates, Jaden felt his heart race. He could almost see it. Earth, the cradle of humanity, the place where everything began. It had been so long. Could the planet still hold the remnants of their once great civilization, or had the Council turned it into a lifeless wasteland? "Set the ship to autopilot," Jaden ordered, turning to his crew. "We're entering Council space. It's time to prepare for what comes next." The crew began to move with purpose, checking weapons, activating shields, and preparing for whatever might happen when they arrived. They had trained for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare them for the reality of what they were about to face. Hours passed, and the ship finally broke through the final veil of space, approaching Earth. The once blue planet now appeared in the distance, a hazy ball of swirling clouds and deep oceans. Jaden's breath caught in his throat. It was Earth. It was still there. But something wasn't right. As they drew closer, the survivors saw that the planet had changed. The landmasses that once thrived with life were now silent, barren. Vast stretches of land were scorched, cities reduced to ruins. The marks of destruction were everywhere. It was clear that the Council had left no stone unturned in their effort to erase humanity from existence. "Look at it," Kara whispered, her voice filled with sorrow and disbelief. Jaden stood silently, his mind racing. Earth was no longer the vibrant, bustling planet he had once known. The Council had scared it beyond recognition, but they hadn't destroyed it completely. Earth was still there, and so were the survivors. "We're not here to mourn," Jaden said quietly, his voice firm. "We're here to take back what's ours. Earth is still ours." But even as he spoke, a shiver ran down his spine. The Council had been thorough, but they hadn't anticipated this. They hadn't anticipated that humanity would return. Now, the real battle was about to begin. Suddenly, a warning alarm blared throughout the ship. "Warning. Council ships detected. Multiple signatures closing in fast." Jaden's heart skipped a beat. The Council had found them. "Brace for impact," he shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "Prepare for battle." The crew scrambled into position. Kara worked quickly, evading the incoming ships and launching countermeasures to throw them off their trail. But it was clear the Galactic Council had been waiting for them. The survivors were no longer alone in this part of the galaxy. They were surrounded by a fleet of ships, each one brimming with the firepower to obliterate them in seconds. "We're outnumbered," Lieutenant Kara said grimly, glancing at Jaden. "But we've got one thing they don't." Jaden met her gaze. "What's that?" "Hope," she replied. The survivors may have been outmatched, but they were not without a chance. Their desperation, their will to reclaim their home, was something the Council couldn't comprehend. The fight for Earth had begun. As the first wave of Council ships closed in, the survivors activated their weapons and shields, preparing for the battle of their lives. It was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a battle for revenge. The Galactic Council had destroyed their world, but now humanity was back, and the Council would soon learn that humanity was never meant to be erased. The fight for Earth was just beginning, and this time the survivors were ready. The final stand, climax of the battle. The air was thick with tension. The survivors' ship, though small compared to the vast fleet of the Galactic Council, stood firm. Earth loomed just ahead, scared and unrecognizable, yet it was still their home. Captain Jaden's eyes locked on the planet, his jaw clenched in determination. He had spent years plotting this moment, years waiting to return, and now that they had finally arrived, there was no turning back. The first volley of laser fire from the Council ships sliced through the void, striking the shields of the survivors' vessel with a deafening crash. The ship rocked violently, but the shields held strong. Kara, the ship's navigator, quickly adjusted their trajectory, dodging another incoming round of fire. "Captain, we can't keep evading like this," Kara said through gritted teeth, her hands working the controls with practiced precision. "We need to stand and fight, or they'll chase us down to the farthest reaches of space." Jaden's heart pounded in his chest. He knew Kara was right. They had no chance of outrunning the Council fleet, and every second they spent evading gave the enemy more time to close in. He turned to face the crew, each of them resolute and ready for what was to come. "Prepare to engage," Jaden ordered, his voice calm but unwavering. "We have one shot at this." With those words, the survivor's ship began to turn, its weapon systems coming online. The enemy ships were closing in fast, their dark shapes growing larger as they surrounded the survivors. The battle was upon them. Jaden could hear the sounds of weapon systems charging, ready to unleash their fury. It was a moment they had been preparing for, yet the weight of the situation hung heavy in the air. The survivor's ship fired first, a series of blinding bursts of energy shooting toward the nearest Council ship. The blast hit its mark, sending the enemy ship veering off course, sparks flying from its damaged hull. But the victory was short-lived. The Council fleet responded immediately, firing back with relentless precision. The battle raged on, a chaotic dance of light and destruction. The survivor's ship moved with surprising agility, avoiding strikes and landing hits on the Council ships when they could. Every maneuver was a matter of life or death. Every shot fired a chance to destroy a part of the enemy fleet. The sound of explosions and the hum of energy weapons filled the air, drowning out everything else. This was the moment that would decide humanity's future. "We've got one shot at this," Lieutenant Kara yelled, glancing up at the main screen. "The main fleet's flagship is just ahead. If we can take it out, the rest will fall." Jaden nodded, his eyes narrowing. "We'll hit them where it hurts. Prepare all weapons. Target the flagship's core. We need to end this now." With a roar, the survivor's ship surged forward, weaving through enemy fire with impressive speed. The Council ships gave chase, determined to destroy the last remnants of humanity once and for all. But the survivors weren't about to give up. They were fighting for more than just survival. They were fighting for revenge, for everything the Council had taken from them. The flagship loomed large in the distance, its black metal surface gleaming under the stars, its weapons powered up, ready to unleash devastating force. But as it drew closer, Jaden saw an opening. The flagship's shields were momentarily down as it fired on another target. This was their chance. "Now," Jaden shouted. The survivor's ship locked onto the flagship, firing everything they had. A barrage of lasers, missiles, and explosive energy struck the flagship's exposed core, sending shockwaves through its hull. The flagship shook violently, its systems failing as it tried to retaliate. The bridge of the ship was engulfed in flames, and smoke poured from its cracked windows. For a moment, it seemed like the ship might survive, but then, with a final explosion, the flagship detonated. The shockwave rippled through space, causing nearby Council ships to veer off course. The flagship, the heart of the fleet, had been destroyed. The survivors had struck a devastating blow. "Direct hit," Lieutenant Kara exclaimed, a grin spreading across her face. "The flagship's gone." But the battle was far from over. The remaining Council ships, enraged and desperate, continued their assault. However, their once organized formation began to falter. Without the flagship to command them, they were vulnerable. The survivors pressed on, hitting them hard, using the chaos to their advantage. Every weapon they fired, every maneuver they made, was an act of defiance. "We can do this," Jaden said through gritted teeth, determination fueling every word. "We can win this fight." In the end, it wasn't just technology or firepower that would win the battle. It was the human spirit, resilience, perseverance, and the unyielding will to survive. The survivors had been pushed to the brink, But now they were fighting back, showing the Galactic Council just how wrong they had been to underestimate humanity. As the last of the Council ships began to retreat, Jaden watched as they fled into the depths of space, leaving the survivors victorious. But as the dust settled and the battle came to an end, there was no celebration, no joy. The survivors had won, but the cost was great. Earth had been scared beyond recognition, and the fight had taken its toll on them all. Yet, in the silence that followed, there was one undeniable truth. Humanity had returned. They had reclaimed their home. Jaden turned to his crew, his eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. "We did it. Earth is ours again." And as they set course for the surface of the planet, the survivors knew that this victory was only the beginning. The Galactic Council might have been powerful, but humanity had something they would never have: a never-ending will to fight, to survive, and to rebuild. Reclaiming Earth, the aftermath. The dust of battle still hung in the air as the survivors' ship slowly descended toward the surface of Earth. The remnants of the Galactic Council's fleet had scattered, retreating into the cold void of space, but the victory felt hollow. The fight had been won, but the toll had been immense. The planet that once teemed with life, humanity's cradle, was now a shadow of its former self. Captain Jaden stood at the bridge, his gaze fixed on the scarred world below. It was still Earth, still their home, but it was a broken home. Cities lay in ruins, landscapes twisted, and the signs of destruction were everywhere. He felt the weight of what had been lost, what had been taken from them. The mission had always been about revenge, about taking back what the Galactic Council had stolen. But now, as the survivors approached the planet, the true cost of that victory became painfully clear. Kara, the ship's navigator, was the first to speak. "Captain, we're nearing the coordinates. Should we land?" Jaden paused, his mind racing. He knew that Earth was not ready to be fully reclaimed, not yet. It would take time. Time to rebuild, to reclaim, to heal. But they could not afford to waste any more time. The survivors had come too far to turn back now. "We land," Jaden said, his voice firm. "It's time to start taking back what's ours." The ship's descent was slow, deliberate. Every inch closer to the surface felt like a step into the unknown. They were entering a world that had been left in the hands of destruction, a world that had been forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. But it was their world, and they would not let it slip into oblivion. As the ship touched down on the barren Earth, the survivors exited the vessel, stepping onto the soil that had once given birth to humanity's greatest achievements. The air was heavy with the scent of charred ruins and the remnants of what had once been life. For a moment, there was silence as the crew of survivors took in the magnitude of what they had returned to. Jaden walked to the edge of their landing site, looking out at the wasteland that stretched before him. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Earth is still ours, and we will rebuild." The survivors had no illusions. Earth had been scared beyond recognition, and the fight to reclaim it would not be easy. The Galactic Council had left their mark, but they had also left behind something they hadn't anticipated: a people unwilling to surrender, unwilling to let their home die. The survivors began to set up a base, gathering what resources they could from the ship and the surrounding area. They scoured the ruins of nearby cities, searching for anything that could be salvaged. There was little left to use, but they found hope in the smallest of things: a piece of technology, a hidden cache of supplies, a sign that humanity had once thrived here. "Captain, we found something," one of the survivors called out. It was one of the crew members, holding up a small dusty data pad. "It's a message from Earth's last days. It's a log from the Council's final assault. This could tell us more about what they did, what happened to the rest of the planet." Jaden took the data pad, his fingers brushing over its surface as it powered on. The screen flickered to life, showing the last few moments of Earth's destruction, a warning from a planet on the brink of extinction. It was a chilling reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. The message was clear. The Galactic Council's destruction had been methodical, precise. But it also revealed a truth they hadn't expected. Earth had not been completely erased. There were hidden places, untouched by the Council's war, waiting to be discovered. "This is our path forward," Jaden said after reading the message. "There are safe zones, areas where the Council didn't strike as hard. We'll need to explore them, rebuild from what's left." But even as the survivors began to make plans for the future, Jaden couldn't help but feel the weight of their situation. The Council might have retreated for now, but they weren't gone. Earth was now a target, too valuable to ignore. Jaden knew it would only be a matter of time before the Galactic Council would regroup, gather its forces, and return. "We've won," Kara said, her voice filled with both pride and sorrow. "But this isn't over. The Council won't let us have Earth without a fight. They'll be back." Jaden looked out over the barren world once more, the remains of civilization scattered before him. "Let them come. We'll be ready." As days passed, the survivors worked tirelessly to establish a foothold on Earth. They set up communications, built rudimentary structures, and scouted the area for any remaining pockets of life. They found small groups of survivors, humans who had managed to escape the Council's destruction and had been living in hiding, waiting for the day when humanity would return. The survivors worked together, united by the shared purpose of reclaiming their world. But even as they worked, the looming shadow of the Galactic Council never left them. They knew that the Council would not forgive the destruction of their flagship, nor would they let go of their plans to completely erase humanity. "We have one advantage," Jaden said to his crew one evening, standing before them as they gathered around the campfire. "We know they will come back. We can prepare. We will be stronger this time. Earth will be our home again, and we will defend it, whatever it takes." The survivors nodded in agreement. Their journey was far from over, and the true fight for Earth was just beginning. The Galactic Council would soon learn that humanity could not be erased. They had come back, not just for revenge, but to restore their world, to rebuild and fight for the future. Jaden turned back to look at the planet they had saved, the planet they would rebuild. And deep inside, he knew that the survivors had not just reclaimed Earth, they had reignited humanity's will to survive. The Galactic Council had underestimated them once. They wouldn't make the same mistake again. The Galactic Council strikes back. The final confrontation. The survivors' camp was quieter than usual that morning. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the ruined landscape of Earth. The days since they had landed had been a mix of hope and hardship, as they struggled to reclaim their world. Yet, despite the small victories, rebuilding shelters, discovering hidden food supplies, and finding more survivors, the threat of the Galactic Council loomed like a dark cloud on the horizon. But the real battle was just beginning. In the midst of the chaos, Jaden and Kara stood together, overseeing the battlefield from the high ground. The sound of explosions echoed around them as they coordinated the defense, moving troops and resources to where they were needed most. But as the minutes ticked by, it became clear that the Council was adapting. They had learned from their last encounter, and were now focusing their fire on Earth's most vulnerable points. The survivors couldn't keep up with the sheer scale of the Council's power. "Captain, we need to take out their command ship," Lieutenant Kara shouted over the roar of weapons fire. "It's the only way to stop them." Jaden nodded. He knew she was right. Without the command ship, the rest of the fleet would lose coordination, and they might have a chance to turn the tide. "Get ready," Jaden said. "We're going after the command ship." The survivors had one final card to play. A stolen Council fighter ship, heavily modified with the best technology they had been able to scavenge. It was a long shot, but it was their only shot. Jaden, Kara, and a small team of the most skilled pilots prepared to make the dangerous assault on the command ship. The fighters lifted off from the surface of Earth, their engines roaring as they shot toward the Council's flagship, which hung in the sky like an imposing shadow. The fighters weaved through enemy fire, narrowly avoiding the barrage of laser blasts coming from the massive ship. "Stay tight," Jaden said through the comms, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We strike fast, and we strike hard." They closed in on the flagship, their weapons primed for the final blow. As they neared the ship, they could see its vulnerable points, the weak spots that the Council hadn't anticipated the survivors would discover. Jaden's pulse quickened. This was it. With a final push, the fighters unleashed everything they had. Explosions rocked the flagship as their weapons struck its core. The flagship shook violently, its systems failing one by one. For a moment, Jaden thought they had failed. But then, the flagship erupted in a blinding flash of light, its massive structure torn apart in a single catastrophic explosion. The survivors had done it. The heart of the Council's fleet was destroyed. As the dust settled and the remaining Council ships began to retreat, the survivors stood victorious, but not unscathed. The battle had been brutal, and the cost had been high. Many lives had been lost, and Earth was still scarred. Yet, in the silence that followed the final explosion, one thing was clear: humanity had won. They had taken back their world. Jaden looked out over the battlefield, the first rays of dawn breaking through the smoke and ash. He felt a deep sense of relief, but also a profound responsibility. Earth was theirs again, but the fight wasn't over. The survivors had proven their strength, but now they had to rebuild, and as long as the Galactic Council existed, they would have to remain vigilant. "We've won," Kara said softly, her voice filled with awe. "But the work is just beginning." Jaden turned to her, his expression determined. "Yes, we fight for our future. We rebuild. Earth is ours, and we will never let it go."